Hello everybody, it's Tuna. I just wanted to make a video to update you guys on my Lightning Strike Champion build that I made in 3.18 that has currently had some changes compared to last league. So I just wanted to make a video updating you guys on that, and also to inform you that I wrote a build guide on Maxroll. It is very in depth. It has literally everything that you need in there. You know, talking about the build from the perspective of a complete beginner coming into this, not knowing what the build is, or if you're returning to the build, whether you'd like to know maybe some extra things that we're going to go through in this video. So first of all, here we just talk about all the skills. Obviously we have Lightning Strike. We are using Whirling Blades to go fast around the maps and things like that. Our layers of defenses are quite substantial. We're using Determination, Grace, and Defiance Banner. Defiance Banner has been nerfed, although it's still, you know, something we use because, of course, Champion gets that for free through its Ascendancies. And on top of that, we have scaling through Perseverance because of that. So Perseverance is a belt that we will use in this build, and it will give us a lot of % damage increase because we get a lot of armor and evasion. So, yep, we use, of course, Assassin's Mark because we are a critical strike build. And what this will do is this will add some critical strike multiplier and things like that on our target, as well as a little bit of base crit, which is, you know, it's a very strong option for us to be using. And we're supplementing that with Ancestral War Chief and Protector. So what these will do is they will give us attack speed and damage. So essentially those are just two buffs that we can use on single target. We gain elusive through our Nightblade. Nightblade is a very strong support gem that is actually enabling for this build. It enables us to use the Claw, and Claws essentially give us a lot of utility through its life gain on hit and access to the nodes, which give us a lot of critical strike, attack speed, and so on and so forth. It's just a very nice way to scale it. But the only thing about Nightblade is that it's a buff that starts high and then goes low over time. The higher your elusive effect is, the more critical strike multiplier you get. So what we want to do is we want to try to keep our elusive up close to its maximum sort of effect, right? And the way we can do that is by putting Withering Step on left click. This will keep our elusive effect up most of the time, and it will maintain the critical strike multiplier that we gain from Nightblade. Our Ascendancy breakdown, we are taking First to Strike, Last to Fall. First to Strike, Last to Fall will be our first Ascendancy. This is because it's going to give us a lot of damage throughout the campaign. We will be able to still proc this, although we did lose Blessing support. We will not be using it in this build anymore. First to Strike, Last to Fall is something that we will have to proc with Corrupting Fever, as that is a skill that can consume a lot of your life. We will link Corrupting Fever to life tap now instead of using a Blessing. Gain First Strike, Last to Fall, aka Adrenaline. And what this will do, this will give us a lot of damage increase, movement speed, and physical damage reduction. So it's a very good buff to have. It's something that I would mostly want to trigger as I'm leveling through the campaign, but necessarily, like, you won't really have to do this in end game when you feel like you have sufficient damage to essentially just map and do all those kinds of things. Although early on, it's a very good buff to have. The second and third Ascendancies is we'll go for Unstoppable Hero into Fortitude. That is because, unfortunately, Unstoppable Hero does not actually gain any sort of benefit to the build until we get Fortitude. We are not able to get Fortify without this node right here. So Unstoppable Hero into Fortitude will be our second and third. That is so we actually have some kind of value before we get into maps, and a lot of tankiness that we gain through there. And lastly, we are gaining Inspirational, which will give us a free banner, as well as a lot of aura effect and things like that. So that is something that we will definitely want to use. And you got to remember as well that if you ever want some regen, for example, like you're degenning down or something like that, you can always place your banner on the floor, and that'll give you a nice burst of regen thanks to Inspirational. That is something that you can definitely use in this build. Offenses and defenses on this character will primarily be focused around stacking a lot of flat added fire, lightning, and cold damage. So essentially what we will do is we will get as much damage as possible on our Claw. We will get critical strike multiplier. That is something that we will get through elusive. Elemental penetration we mostly get on the tree. Otherwise we get for generic attack damage, elemental damage also from the tree and from our jewels. Frenzy charges, of course, we will gain frenzy charges from our tree as well, since we'll gain 10% chance to gain frenzy charge from marked enemies if we hit them. Attack speed obviously is a really good stat, something that we want on our Claw all the time. It's essential to doing as much damage as possible. Elusive effect is something that we will gain mostly on the passive tree. It's something that you can also gain on boots, but it's not something we'll actually go for in this build. And aura scaling is also very good, as it will scale our grace and evasion, and that will feed into perseverance, our belt. Our defenses are mostly coming from obviously grace and determination, and we will scale that further with our flasks, so granite and jade flask. When we roll them with percent armor and percent evasion suffixes, that will give us a lot of defense in that way. We will gain a lot of defense through our fortify, 100% spell suppression, 100% ailment avoidance, which I feel like are quite essential to making the build feel stable and very tanky in endgame. We gain corrupted blood immunity. This is essential. Elusive effect also, as elusive grants us percent chance to avoid hits. So what that will do is grant us about 30% chance to avoid hits on top of our evasion and on top of you know, like everything else that we have on this character. So when you look at this character, is very layered, and it's very good at mitigating hits and things like that, although it does suffer from damage over time, and damage over time is something that you can mitigate through our sustain that we grant that is granted by claws, so life gain on hit, leech from our attacks and things like that, as well as our banners as we discussed earlier. So those are our main layers of defense on this build. For leveling, we will be mainly using a two-handed weapon for our early axe, and we will upgrade our two-handed weapon over time through the rustic sash vendor recipe. That will be, if you're vendoring a rustic sash, a blacksmith whetstone, and a weapon, you will gain a weapon back with physical damage, and essentially that allows us to keep up with our damage through the axe. We will be using Spectral Helix as our main skill gem. As you can see, from level 2 we will use firstly Splitting Steel through Act 1, and as we're leveling up we will link that to Chance to Bleed and Onslaught. And we will grab Ancestral Protector as soon as possible, and War Banner, and Dash will be our primary way to get around. And with level 8 we want to link Ancestral Protector with MAME support as we go on. Level 10 and level 12 we will gain Spectral Helix, Chance to Bleed, and Onslaught support. So now that we've gained Spectral Helix, once we've entered Mirvale's Cavern, we want to equip that as soon as possible. That will grant us a huge damage increase compared to Splitting Steel. Then from there, we just want to grab other support gems. So in Act 2, you will grab Herald of Purity, first of all, and Herald of Ash. This will grant us another big buff because of physical damage, and physical damage is extra. We'll grab Leap Slam as well. This is a much better way for us to get around compared to Dash, as it covers bigger distances. And Blood Rage will grant us Frenzy Charges as we're killing, as well as a lot of attack and cast speed. We will then link our faster attacks to Leap Slam. And we want to make sure that, you know, we're jumping around fast as possible through the axe and getting as much distance as possible with our leaps. For our 4 link, we will then link faster attacks onto our Spectral Helix, and we will also get Poacher's Mark at this point, which will grant us a lot of physical damage when we hit a target. And then at some point around level 34 or so, we will do our claw swap. So this is when you want to look for a claw with elemental damage. If you've picked up essences as you've leveled through the campaign, you want to make sure that you're either alching or throwing a elemental essence on your claw to get as much elemental damage as possible onto it. And this is where we will change our 4 link to Spectral Helix, Nightblade support, increased critical strikes, and added cold damage. For our auras at this point, since we are swapping, we will go for Determination, Grace, Blood Rage, and Poacher's Mark is still going to be on there. And since we have swapped the claws, we can no longer Leap Slam, so we get Whirling Blades. And with Whirling Blades, we link that to faster attacks, and we can put Ancestral Totem in there as well. And as we said previously, we will be using Corrupting Fever with Life Tab support to proc our Adrenaline, and we will use Precision as well to make sure that we are keeping up with the accuracy that we need on this build. Defiance Banner will be on top of that, something that we want to use. And if you want another movement ability, you can always use Smoke Mine, or you can always revert back to Dash at that point. And for our 5th link, we will use elemental damage with attacks, and as soon as we get Mark on hit, we want to link that to Assassin's Mark. This will give us a lot more consistent critical strikes on single target, and will be very good addition to the build. For our passive tree, we are starting as a duelist. And the first thing we will do is we will path out. We will grab some life, as well as some armor and evasion here, and some attack speed. The next step will be to grab damage, so that we are keeping up with, essentially being able to kill things faster in Act 1. Be very good. From here, the next thing I like to grab is Life Leech. Life Leech will give us some sustain. We won't have as much mana issues, and on single target we'll be mostly able to sustain that until Basically, the more damage you do later on, the more you're going to be able to leech. So early on, you might want to keep your mana flask until you can feel like you're sustaining, and then after that, you won't have any more issues. And here, the main thing that we want to grab after that is Precise Technique. This will grant us a lot of damage early on, and it's something that we do definitely want to rush. Although you need to keep in mind that you need to keep your accuracy higher than your life. So one way to check that is you press your character tab in the game, and you just look at your main hand accuracy rating, and you want that sum to be higher than your maximum life. So make sure that you're checking that as you go, and make sure you're never falling below. You're falling behind with your accuracy rating. Next, what we want to do is we want to grab a little bit more damage. So we'll go through Master of the Arena. We'll grab Destroyer as well. That's a little bit more damage for our two-handed physical weapons. And from there, we'll grab a little bit more life and a little bit more armor and evasion. Although we also get a lot of onslaught effect from this. So essentially, since we are linking onslaught in our main links, this will make us faster as we progress through the campaign. Next, a really good thing to go for is Feller of Foes. So once we grab this, we will be able to grab the Mastery, and the Mastery grants us Rage every time we hit an enemy, and that is a really good Mastery for leveling, as Rage will give us movement speed and damage, and yeah, that is a very good addition to the build. From there, the next thing that we'll want to grab is the Mark Mastery. This will grant us Frenzy Charge Sustain on single target, as well as we're leveling. We will have Blood Rage, but to maintain that on single target, the Mark Mastery is a very effective way to do that. And since we are at this point most likely going to be triggering it with Mark on hit, we'll also get Culling Strike, so 10% more damage essentially on single target is going to be very good for us to get through bosses, and yeah, essentially it's going to make our life smoother and easier as we're leveling. And the rest of the tree at this point, you have a lot of damage, so you're just going to go for more life. Make sure you got your accuracy, so you grab accuracy. Go through Quick Step for more movement speed, and Heart of Oak for more life and regen. Here you grab more accuracy as well as finesse, and we go and fill out the rest of the tree. So you grab Revenge of the Hunted or evasion rate and max life and charisma. At this point, this is when you'll be able to fit your 2 auras and Defiance Banner. So that is something that you want to grab, although you don't have to rush that. Don't worry about it. That's why we grab it a little bit later on as we fill out our damage first. Next, we would travel more closer and closer towards the claw nodes. So before you want to do swap, essentially you want to be around this area. So you can do your swap before you go for these nodes or after. It's completely up to you. You don't necessarily need this accuracy cluster. If you have enough accuracy already on your gear, you don't need to actually grab this. So keep that in mind. Make sure to check your character tab. Make sure you have enough accuracy for your precise technique. And yeah, make sure to keep up with that. And from here, we'll just grab more sockets. So if you have jewel sockets, you can grab this. If you don't have any jewels that you want to put in there, don't worry about it. You're not going to need it. And yeah, the first Ascendancy, as we talked about earlier, is going to be First to Strike. And that'll be able to proc us our Adrenaline, make us faster through the axe. And next, it'll be Unstoppable Hero and Fortitude. And that about sums up the Helix leveling. And at this point, this is when you're going to need to be swapping to claws. Ideally, you want to do it earlier, but as soon as you can, you want to swap the claws when you're close to these nodes, because here is when we can do our big respec. It's not that big, but essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be respecing out of those nodes here. So as you can see here, we respec out of these nodes. We take Precise Technique out, we take Destroyer out, and we take Feller of Foes out as well. And we're going to put those points forward onto the claw nodes. So as you can see here, we take the claw cluster, we take the crit as well. And from here on out, all we're going to be doing is we're going to be filling out our critical strike chance to make sure that we're getting max effectiveness out of Nightblade. This is giving us a lot of critical strike multiplier. It's going to multiply our damage, and it's going to make it feel a lot smoother. Things are going to start shattering, freezing, and things like that. So that's another big layer that is going to keep us safe. Here we will grab Lethality as well for more critical strike, and Heartseeker for multi and chance. So at this point, your tree is basically already looking like pretty filled out. So we will grab some more defenses. We start by grabbing Entrench, so that's going to give us some suppression. And we're going to take 10% suppress spell damage if your boots, your helmet, and gloves have evasion. So our preferred bases are going to be armor and evasion. So make sure to actually have evasion on your boots and stuff like that, so you can get effect out of that mastery before grabbing that. Next, we will take Innervate for more suppression. And here we will go for the dagger nodes. So it might seem really weird that we're taking dagger nodes, but the reason why we're taking dagger nodes is because it's granting us elusive effect. And as I mentioned before, elusive effect is giving us a lot of damage in forms of critical strike multiplier. And it's also the mastery that grants us critical strike multiplier for supported skills, which are supported by Nightblade. So that is more, once more, like a lot of critical strike multiplier. Then we want to go for forces of nature. We will grab our elemental resistance mastery as well, so that'll get a little bit of strain off of our gear, and it'll be a lot easier for us to sort of cap our resistances that way. And we're also cleaning up the tree here a little bit. From here we want forces, one with nature, sorry. So one with nature will grant us some elemental damage as well as some resistances. You can grab this earlier if you like. It's a very good node to have. If you need to cap your resistance, just grab it. It's very, very efficient. So that is a lot of critical strike chance as well. And next we will respec this leech node, and we will grab these two instead. So Clever Thief and life and mana on hit. So that'll essentially will always give us enough life on hit, as well as leech that we can, you know, essentially sustain our build's mana, and so will keep us, you know, healthy all the time. And yeah, for the ascendancies, the last ascendancy will be inspirational. This will grab an Uber Lab, and inspirational is going to give us a big buff to you know, our grace and determination, as well as grant us a little bit more mana to play around with, because it's gonna make sure our banner reserves no more mana. For our endgame tree, not much changes outside of us mainly taking more frenzy charges and gems. As you can see, when I swap to this tree, what we do is we respec out of some of these points and we move up to here. We will grab some of these points too, as these will be very good for our brutal restraint or lethal pride jewels that we were grabbing later. We'll grab the frenzy charges, and as long as we have enough energy shield, ghost dance is always a good thing to grab. So when you get a blizzard crown, or if you have enough energy shield already, grab ghost dance. It's very good. But if you don't have enough energy shield, say like 300 or more, you don't necessarily need to grab ghost dance, though it's a very, very nice thing to have extra on top of everything. Always make sure to see how much accuracy rating you have. You do not necessarily need both of these accuracy clusters. So if you already have a 100% chance to hit, you can drop one of these clusters. One of the other is completely fine. So this is granting us a lot of critical strike chance as well. So, you know, if you need more critical strike chance, keep this cluster and drop this cluster. Otherwise, go the other way around. Completely fine. And yeah, try to cap your suppression as soon as possible, because that is also granting us a lot of critical strike chance. The main thing to worry about here is that you're keeping your crit as high as possible, because it's going to give us a lot of damage through yeah, it's going to give us a lot of damage through our elusive effect and things like that. And as soon as you swap to lightning strike, make sure to also grab point blank. You do not want to grab this for spectral helix, but when you swap to lightning strike, you want to grab point blank. That's because it's giving us 30% more damage, as we are mostly in melee range. That is what we're looking like when we swap to lightning strike through mid and end game. If you're ever struggling in the campaign, make sure to always go back to the PoE Maxroll guide, as it's going to tell you exactly what to do, when to do it. So as you can see, it's very, very detailed, Act 1 all the way to Act 10. Or if you just want a cheat sheet, you can click Act 1 to 10. This is even going to give you some rejects that you can copy in your vendors to make sure to find the things that you need. It's going to tell you literally everything that you need to do, your gems that you need to have, when to swap, and so on and so forth. Yeah, if you want a very, very detailed version of this, then you can see Act 1. It tells you who to talk to, when to talk to them, etc. What gems to have, what to pick up, all that kind of stuff. So Taitai really did a great job. He outdid himself on this one. So props to him. Once again, thank you very much for that, Taitai. And yeah, I would love to see you guys make use of this if you need it. And I'm very, very happy to be able to provide this to you guys. It's been a lot of work and a lot of time. So yeah, I'm very happy to see finally us being able to put these guides out. And I hope you guys find use for these. Another big section within this guide will be the character progression. So the character progression section will tell you exactly what to do and when to do it. Essentially, we have some milestones here for you to follow. So your first milestone will be your weapon, for example. This will tell you what kind of a weapon you're looking for, how much elemental damage is good, and also provide you with a trade link for that. Second milestone will be the perseverance belt. This is quite a rare belt, but if you're playing in trade league, It's not going to be too difficult to get this one. It's going to cost anywhere between 50 to 40 chaos on day 1, and then it's going to plummet down to very, very cheap. It's not a very rare belt, and it ends up being about 3 chaos after a week. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But that is a really, really good upgrade that you want to make as soon as possible. It is essential to really scaling our build and allowing us to scale our defenses and granting us damage in turn, as well as a lot of speed through onslaught. The next upgrade that I always like to make is the Gull. The Gull is a very, very good item that at first sight seems a little bit weird. It grants you shrines, and these shrines are going to give you a lot of power. Although the big power that we get is through the Alice passive skills. That is because the Gull will empower the shrines that we find in maps. So through grabbing these passive skill trees, through supplication, drawn to power and synapticism, we will always have shrines in our maps, and whenever we grab the shrines, the duration of them is extended, and the effect is also extended and buffed by the Gull. So essentially it's going to make our mapping experience a lot better, and it's something that you want to grab as soon as possible. For our flasks, we always want to have this flask set, so Eternal Life Flask, with percent recovery is what I really enjoy. A Diamond Flask is essential. We need critical strike chance as a suffix on that. Quicksilver Flask is also very, very good for our movement speed, although you could always drop this if you feel like you just want a whirling blade around instead. That is completely up to you. Then we have a Granite Flask and a Jade Flask. These are essential to the build. We want percent evasion and percent armor on the suffixes for those. That is very, very essential to the build, so make sure you're grabbing those and rolling those as soon as possible. And if you can, put Instilling Orbs, because Instilling Orbs will make your life much, much easier, and you won't have to be pressing those flasks anymore. And yeah, make sure to use essences as you're gearing your character. Use the right bases. It is important to use the right bases, as we are an armor and evasion build. You want to grab the highest armor evasion bases. So keep an eye out for the Nightmare Bassinet, the Triumphant Lamellar, the Dragon Scale Gauntlets, or the Pigface Bassinet, as well as Two-Tone Boots. These are the best bases with the highest values of armor and evasion, and they will buff our perseverance even further, and that's something that we want to keep an eye out on. So Essence is on a map device this league. Essence is something that you want to probably grab early on. Our build is powerful enough to actually deal with essences quite easily, so we will use those essences to craft our gear. And you can look here what we will use for them. It's, mainly greed essences, hatred essence, anger, wrath. You can use all of these essences to make your gear pieces early on. Zeal essences are very, very good for your boots, as they provide movement speed, and guaranteed movement speed is always nice. And for our rings, we will use Spite and Rage. That is completely up to you, and you can always have like elemental resistances or attributes crafted. And for our jewels, the first jewel that we want to grab is Mantra of Flames. Mantra of Flames will grant us a lot of flat damage. This flat damage is, essential for our build, as generally claws are very starved on damage. Mantra of Flames is going to provide a substantial amount of fire damage, almost as much as an anger. So yeah, you want to grab that as soon as possible. And there's other rare jewels that you can grab. You can follow this trade link here for the kinds of jewels. You can also grab chance to gain phase gone kill on Abyssal Jewel. This is something you want. And if you're feeling like you have enough currency and you have a lot of currency, you could always grab an Inspired Learning. It's going to speed up our mapping substantially. You want to grab an Anointed Talisman as soon as possible. This will allow us to swap the Lightning Strike. As soon as we have an additional strike, we can swap the Lightning Strike from Spectral Helix. And you can follow this link here, and it's going to take you to the trade website. It's going to show you all the amulets with Tribal Fury Anointed. And that is going to swap to the League as soon as it's launched, so don't worry about that. And yeah, that pretty much sums it up for the gearing. This is the early game, but if you'd like to know more about like later on in the game, then you can always move the milestones over to mid game and to end game. And in end game, if you're ever finding yourself at this point, you can always like look at these crafting guides on top of that. So there's these really good crafting guides that I wrote up to tell you how to craft your claw and things like that. But keep in mind that these are very, very expensive crafts, so this is for end game. And yeah, this is something that you're gonna want to be tackling 1-2 weeks into League, or however long it takes you. It's completely up to you. There's no rush at all. And yeah, those are the crafting. So that about sums up the build and this build guide as well. I'd like to sum it up with saying thank you very much for watching. I hope you are gonna have a good League start, and I do really recommend this build. I started with it last League. I've been playing Lightning Strike since 3.16, pretty much every League, religiously. I love the skill. It is very, very good. I'm a big fan of Lightning Strike. Although this league, I'll probably take a league off from Lightning Strike. I'll probably end up going back to it at some point, but you never know. I hope you guys found this guide helpful, and I really do hope that you find Maxroll helpful as well. Make sure to check out the website because it's completely crazy. There's all kinds of cool stuff like currency guides. There's going to be crafting guides soon, all the bosses, and there's additionally other build guides that you can take a look at. And you can see the list here on the side. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, and I do really appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a great launch. I'm sorry I'm not very good at speaking in general. I really struggle with doing these videos, but you know, I hope it was clear and concise enough, and I hope you do find any more information that I might not have, you know, expressed through, you know, this video in the guide. And yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye bye.